in Europe and I think everywhere else in the world, the democratic system and the success of the democratic system doesn't depend on the winner. It depends on the loser. And this is a reality which is very, very difficult to communicate, but maybe it's a reality that also should be communicated to the Iraqi people. The one who loses the election is the one who legitimizes the election. I was personally very surprised when I watched the US presidential elections, and the experts on television were saying that there is no there's no norm what the loser has to do. There's no norm even when the presidential election is over, unless the loser gives a concession speech and says, I hereby concede, I congratulate my opponent, I congratulate the other president, I have lost the election. The moment that a person says, I have lost the election, the struggle is over and we can return to work. And in Europe, of course, the concept of opposition is a very different one than it is in, let's say, most countries of the region, because there is a role for the opposition. In some countries, like in the UK, the opposition has a shadow government, which means like the opposition mirrors the positions and the key functions of the government members in the opposition. So there is people, and this is also the case in Germany, there's people responsible for international relations, for foreign policy, for environmental policies, for economic policies. It is very frustrating to be in the opposition, especially when you have a strong government coalition. It is frustrating. And you need to motivate yourself a lot to participate in the political process, but you have control over the government. The only problem that I see, maybe, and I don't want to comment the political situation in Iraq at all, but the only problem that I see here is in Europe, a coalition is based on a contract. 2 or 3 parties that did not necessarily win the election, but that formed a majority, they make a contract and they say, we will have the following program, we have the following goals. This is our joint program for the next 4 to 5 years. And you cannot just say, I'm leaving the coalition for any reason. You cannot say, okay, I changed my mind and I'm going to side with the other parties to form a new coalition. Once you have made a coalition, this is a contract, this is binding, and it needs to take a very good reason to leave the coalition. And so the fact that we have a government coalition and an opposition means that there is a real role for both sides. Opposition is not just like nobodies. People participate in the process. And how you participate in the process, that of course depends on the creativity. But once again, I think we really need to face this reality. The one who loses the election, the one who is not forming the government, is as important for the success of democracy as the winner is, probably even more.
شكرا دانيال. سعادة السفير جولدمان من وجهة نظرك كعضو بالبرلمان السويسري لاحق.
There is, in addition to what we just have heard, an extremely important role of the opposition, because they represent within the political system, within the parliament, those who are not with the government. If they don't play that role, that means that those who do not agree with the government are outside of the political system. That is the reason why they have to be integrated, not in the government, but in the role of the opposition. That's extremely important for the integration, actually, for the relation between the political sphere or the political class as such with the people.
Yes. So indeed, next year in 2022, we will have presidential and legislative election in France. And it's actually going to be a big deal because for a while now, for over 20 years, but it has accelerated in the recent years since 2007 and then 2012 and 2017, there has been a dramatic drop in participation in the elections, both the presidential and the legislative. Just to give you an example, in 2017 we had 20%, and 20% of people who didn't show up to vote for the presidential election, and for the legislative election it was 57%, which is enormous. And that actually poses a very deep concern for democracy itself and for representative democracy itself. And it's actually been a topic that has been debated by French political analysts, but also all citizens. If you win an election by such a short margin, what is your legitimacy and how can you rule? Even though you get a majority in the parliament, what kind of political legitimacy do you have? And there's been a debate whether we should count blank votes or people who don't actually show up to vote. For the moment, people do not agree to do so, and for understandable reasons. But yeah, that's the first point. And actually, another interesting point about the next elections in France is that for a while now, the political landscape in France has been polarizing enormously. And the thing is, to the point that in 2022, we will be facing a difficult choice, because the left-wing party and the right-wing party, who should have been structuring the opposition during Macron's mandate, haven't been existing as is and have been very weak and weakening. So we will have a choice basically between the ruling president and the second round of the election and the extreme right. And so the question of participation, specifically the participation of young people, is going to be a very hot topic and is going to be very important. Also because there's been a dramatic increase of young people who agree with extreme right ideas. So you see all of the hot topics that we're going to talk about in France in the coming months.
Yes. The situation in Germany is that, of course, more and more people, the government tries to encourage more and more people to participate in the elections. So some of the parties have said, why don't you reduce the age? Because usually when you're 18, you're allowed to vote. But there are some discussions to say, like, why don't you bring in the youth? Why is a person that is 16-year-old not eligible to vote? A person at the age of 16 may have a political conscience, and that person might be able to decide for him or herself who they want to vote for. But in general, I don't see the discussion in Germany so negative about participation in the elections. It's going up and down, but I don't see a general discontent with participating in the elections. What I see in Germany is probably something that you can observe in Iraq under very different circumstances. Many people have shifted from one party to the other. You don't have the traditional voters anymore. You don't have, as you used to have like 30 or 40 years ago, where inside a family for generations, or for at least 1 or 2 generations, people would vote for this or that party. People have become like nomads. They're moving from one party to the other. And the big contradiction that I see in Germany is people say the parties don't stand for anything anymore, they're all the same. The parties don't have an ideology. They don't have an idea to present that is unique. Well, 15 years ago, I would hear people who would tell you, I'm fed up with ideologies. I don't want party politics, I don't want party ideologies. But now, I feel, that's a very personal view, that there is a nostalgia for ideology. One of the probably most important parties in the history of democracy, worldwide, in my view, is the Social Democratic Party of Germany. It has brought so much change. I'm not a member of this party, but it has brought so much change to society and political life in Europe that it's really a noteworthy political institution. This party is down in the polls to 15%, probably 15 or 18%. It was the party of Chancellor Gerhard Schröder, who you know, the party of Chancellor Willy Brandt. It was the party that was really an institution and ready to rule at any time. But this party has disintegrated, and the weird thing is we cannot even say whose fault it is. It's just that people don't buy the brand of this party anymore. And so the concern is now when people vote, they don't vote for one party, but they vote for a coalition. They have a coalition in mind of government that might be ruling after the elections that we have this autumn. Could be the Green Party and the Conservative Party, could be the Green Party and the Conservative Party and the Liberal Party, but they think in terms of who is going to be in the government and who is going to be in the opposition. And maybe I would like to talk about the opposition later, if we have time.
Yeah, later.
What it means to
We'll
be
speak
in the
about-
opposition, because that is something that I always wanted to discuss here in Iraq.
Yes, thank you.